Hey YouTube, my name's Rob. Welcome to my channel, Northern Revolutions, where I'm going to talk about everything vinyl record collecting, talk about music. Thought I'd do a little introductory video to introduce you to me and my channel, tell you a little bit about myself and my record collecting journey, how I got here, sort of what I'm into. I thought I'd talk about, some of the records that got this whole thing started. So, as I said, my name's Rob. I live up in Canada. I can pinpoint almost the exact moment that I became a music fan, and I will always remember where I was, who I was with, what I listened to. When I was a kid, I wasn't a big music fan. It wasn't a thing that was of any interest to me. My dad was a large music fan, had a big record collection, but it just wasn't something that I was into. I mean, I was aware of music. He played records all the time, but it didn't interest me. And then fast forward to the early 90s when I was in high school, I would say probably 92, 93, I would have been 14 or 15. And I remember my dad had just got new speakers, I believe, for the stereo, and to try it out, he put on Abbey Road. For me, this is what started it all. I vividly remember when Carry That Weight came on, he just cranked it, and I stopped what I was doing. I was just blown away. I mean, obviously I was aware of the Beatles. I mean, who isn't? You can't live on this planet and not have heard the Beatles. Obviously I knew, the big hits or whatever, but something about that moment just was almost like an epiphany. I was just, from that moment on, music became my thing, and I started going through Dad's record collection and just sort of kind of like Pac-Man, just kind of gobbling it up as fast as I could. But this was the first record, and this one for me, this copy in particular, holds some sentimental value, because this was the record. This was Dad's. This was his original first pressing from his collection. Unfortunately, he's passed away now, but I liberated some records from his collection when I moved out and went to university, and this was one, and I still own it to this day, and it's in immaculate condition. This was the one that started it. I think coincidence or whatever, that was around the same time that the Beatles were putting out the anthology series on television and the anthology albums on CD. And so I watched them, and I remember watching them when they aired on ABC, and then I bought the DVDs and I bought the CDs, and it was magical. It sounds kind of cliche, but it was. It just it did something, and I started picking it through Dad's records and listening to whatever he had that was the Beatles, with the Beatles, and the Hey Jude, North American odds and ends sort of album. But the next one that really hit me as I was starting to gobble up the Beatles catalog, Sgt. Pepper. I think it's the greatest album of all time. I'm by no means a music expert. I'm just a music fan. But the first time that I heard this record, I was at my friend's girlfriend's house, and she put it on for whatever reason, and I was just, from those very first notes of Sgt. Pepper and how it blends into With a Little Help from My Friends, I was just, what is this? I mean, like, I knew what it was, but it just blew me away. And that those two moments sort of cemented for me that they were my favorite band, and still are my favorite band, and probably always will be my favorite band. And I have a pretty extensive Beatles collection. This was the first copy that I ever bought. It's a mono first pressing from Canada. It's in reasonably good shape. I don't play my original pressings anymore. I've got the new remasters, which are the ones of choice for me, but I still have all my originals, obviously, for sentimental value. So this was the second album that lit a fire in me, if you will. I remember at that time that my dad was quite excited that I was sort of catching the record bug. See, I remember this was, early 90s. CDs were the thing. And while I had CDs, for some reason I enjoyed sort of the tactile experience of vinyl. It's a bigger physical entity, and you take the disc out and you put it on and you flip it. And I just enjoyed that experience more than the CD experience. I had a lot of CDs. I liked the portability of it, but vinyl was the thing. So needless to say, my dad was excited that I sort of had caught the vinyl bug, and that I was just getting into music in any shape or form. So he was always one to be suggesting things that I might want to listen to, because at that time I was only listening to the Beatles. And now that's only a few months, but Dad said, you got to broaden your horizons. And he was right. So the next album that really did it for me was one that Dad suggested. And if I was stranded on a desert island, this would have to be with me. The self-titled album by the band. Obviously, I have a certain affinity for them. They're Canadian, or mostly Canadian. They're sort of Americana, or whatever you want to call it, that rootsy sort of rock, whatever it is, I find really appealing. I don't know that there's ever been this quality of caliber of musicians together in a band before. You've got, an amazing songwriter. You've got 4 lead singers, incredible musicians, all of them. I know Big Pink is the one that everyone talks about, but for me, it's their second album that really just, I don't know, did it. There's some amazing songs on it. Rag Mama Rag, The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down, Cripple Creek, Unfaithful Servant, King Harvest. I mean, what an amazing roots record. Love it. This is Dad's copy from whenever it came out, which is in the early 70s, I believe. Anyway, this was the third album that just did it for me. The other big one at the time for me was one that was a big record for a lot of people. And it may be cliche, because it's one of the greatest selling records of all time, but it's one of the greatest selling records of all time for a reason. Fleetwood Mac's Rumors. I think the first time that I really sort of had a conscious awareness of Fleetwood Mac, I remember when Bill Clinton was running for president, and he used Don't Stop as his campaign anthem. And then sort of, if I remember correctly, on the heels of that sort of popularity of that song, Fleetwood Mac did the Dance, which was their sort of live reunion concert. And I just thought, wow, this is an incredible rock band. So I dug out Dad's copy of Rumors, which this is, and I played it, and I played it, and I played it, and I bought it on CD, and I had it in my Discman every day at school. Here I am, a 16-year-old in high school in the mid-90s when everyone's listening to Nirvana and I'm listening to Fleetwood Mac. Go figure. I know my roomers still love it to this day. Blows my mind. One of the things you may notice about the first few choices in my record journey is they're all older music. You know, this was the 90s when I was getting into this, and these were all 60s and 70s. My first foray into contemporary music at the time, the girl that I was dating at the time was a big U2 fan. And she said, "You've got to listen to Joshua Tree," which an amazing record. I mean, I think to this day U2 is probably still the greatest rock band in the world today. I love almost all their albums. I have all their albums now. I've seen them live in concert. They're incredible. But this was the one that I was just like, this is fantastic. I mean, you've got stuff like Where the Streets Have No Name, my favorite U2 song still. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. With or Without You, Bullet the Blue Sky. Just absolutely incredible rock songs. I just love it, and still play it all the time today. The next one that I sort of discovered on my own isn't that big of a leap if you consider that I was such a Beatles fan that I should listen to sort of the contemporary amalgam to that, which, you know, is Oasis. Around the time that I was really starting to get into music is when this album blew up. Yeah, Wonderwall was played relentlessly. It's fine, but this album is a modern masterpiece. It's my generation's version of what the Beatles did. Am I saying that they're as good as Oasis? No, not even. Or that Oasis are as good as the Beatles? No, not even close. But for a band to sort of capture the, audience that it did around the world in such a big fashion, yeah, it's a fairly decent analogy, I guess. I mean, I just love this album. I mean, some of the songs in here, like Champagne Supernova, wow, love it. So this was the next record. Now I will say, this is not an original. I don't have an original. I really want an original. I can't afford an original because they're stupid expensive. I had it on CD. I probably had a couple copies because I wore them out. Obviously, this is the 2014 remaster. Because I didn't have it on vinyl back then. But it was still such an important part of my musical journey that, I got to include it. And then last but not least, was a record by a band that has played a huge part in my life. And if you don't live in Canada, or you're not from Canada, you have probably not heard of these guys, which is a shame. They're an absolute musical institution in this country. It's a band called Blue Rodeo. They are from Toronto. They are I'd call them a roots rock, country rock band, I guess. They've been around for 35 years. They're in the Canadian Music Hall of Fame. I would say they're the current equivalent of the band. And in fact, when the band was inducted into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame, Blue Rodeo was their backing band. Circle of Life, I guess. They put out an album in 2000 called The Days in Between. I think I first sort of discovered it, again, if you're not from Canada, the Canadian equivalent of MTV was something called Much Music, a video channel that played music videos 24/7. And I remember the first single from this record, which was Somebody Waits. That video got a lot of airplay back at the time. And I thought, that's great. I like that. And I sort of delved into that album, this album. a little bit. I bought it on CD, and turns out that I was familiar with a lot of their back catalog, even though I wasn't aware that it was them. They are my next favorite band besides the Beatles. I have everything they've ever put out, including this, which is ridiculously rare. It was never actually for sale. It's a promo release. I luckily have 2 copies. I've got another signed one on my office wall, which you'll see in my room tour, which I'll do at some point soon. I have seen these guys Nowhere to Lie 47 times live. I've met them many times. I'm actually good friends with the guy who was their keyboard or their pedal steel player for 17 years. I have a long history with this band and I absolutely love them. That's a long way of saying when I discovered this record, I really discovered the rich fabric that is Canadian music. And I'm going to talk a lot about that on my channel because I'm a real big, passionate fan of Canadian music and sort of the Canadian singer-songwriter tradition. But this was my introduction to that. So those are the records that in the space of, I don't know, 5 years or so, back in the 90s, sort of lit the fire. I became a record collector right then and there. Yes, I have CDs and bought any in years, but records were always sort of the thing that I bought when my friends would go to the music store to, you know, buy a CD. I'd be looking for records or getting a vinyl something ordered or, you know, whatever. And I would be going to record shows back then when not a lot of people went to record shows. And I never stopped buying vinyl. And I'm so glad that it has made the resurgence that it has. And I'm so glad that it has the popularity that it has. And it's wonderful to see, you know, all new music coming out on vinyl. And it's wonderful to see all of the older music getting reissued, you know, 180 gram remasters and that kind of thing, just because the sound quality is so much better. That's my vinyl story. I hope you find it interesting. I hope you'll like this video. Maybe you'll subscribe. I'm going to post content regularly. I am going to do a room tour in the next day or so and get that posted as well. You can see I've got my collection behind me and some assorted memorabilia and guitars, and we're going to talk about all of that as well. So thank you for watching my video, and I hope you'll enjoy everything that Northern Revolutions has to offer, and I'm glad to be part of the online vinyl community. Thanks. Have a good one.